About 2 weeks ago, a friend of mine that I haven't spoken to in quite a long time, and he reached out to me and said, "Hey, Erik, I've seen you doing a lot of things about charity, and I want to give away €1 million. He has made a lot of money in the gambling industry as well, and I don't know how to do that. Can you please guide me?" So I hung up the phone after a 20-minute phone call that had generated €500,000. I felt my jaw had dropped, and I knew that I'd stumbled onto something big. The question was just, how am I gonna take this further?
And as you hear, this is a normal, ordinary day in the life of Erik Bergman. And if you're new here to our podcast and don't know who Erik is, he is the founder of Great.com, a company that gives away 100% of its profits to save the climate. And before Erik turned 30, he made over 50 million euros when he co-founded the company Catena Media and took Catena from 0 to 300 employees in just 5 years. And he's also very eager and energized to teach his over 250,000 Instagram followers everything he knows about business and personal development. Hey, Erik.
Hey, Emil. Good to see you again. Long time. And I'm here with Emil, who was the first one joining me in Great over 2 years ago now. He is the host of this Becoming Great podcast and also our other charity podcast. And he's among the most annoyingly intelligent people that I've met in my life. And he's my creative sparring partner that I just love learning things together with on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter, creating all this content. And on the side of podcasting and Great, he runs a personal development coaching business. How are you today, my good friend?
I am excited to be back. And like you mentioned, we are just back after a break. We took a summer break, and gentlemen as we are, we didn't tell anyone. We just kind of vanished. So that was actually kind of a douchey move. So we're sorry about that. Next year, we'll try to announce when we leave you to do things in the sun, swimming, and so on. And if you're new here to the podcast, this is the BecomingGreat.com podcast. And the purpose and why we have these conversations is to help and inspire you who wants to make the world, or just your own life too, for that matter, better through entrepreneurship and personal development. Today's episode is an update episode where you get a sneak peek into what startup life really is. And we share our victories and challenges in building Great.com. And today's episode is divided into 4 topics. In the first topics, we're looking at the fact that Great.com is still making 0 revenue, how that feels, and what we're going to do to change that. In the second topic, we're going to look at that mysterious phone call where Erik made, or whatever he did, 500,000 euros in 20 minutes. And in the third topic, we're going to look at recruitment. We have just finished a pretty drawn-out process to hire a podcast coordinator, and we're going to dissect what we did well and what we could have done better. And in the fourth topic, we are going to look at a $100,000 donation we recently did and how we did with our intentions of getting PR. Did we succeed or did we fail? Zero revenues, and we are 2 years into this project. How does it feel, Erik?
I find myself looking for good reasons why we have 0 revenues. I find myself arguing that this is a good thing. And at the same time, I feel both frustrated, a bit of shame, and a little bit stupid over the fact that we have 0 revenues and haven't, from the looks of it, gotten further than we have.
Right. And do you think those negative emotions come from some kind of outside pressure that you had previous successes and now people, whoever that is, expect you to succeed right away?
I'm not sure where it's coming. I think it comes more from me than anything else. And so when I'm looking at the progress that we have made, I think that we have done amazing work at putting together a really good team of people. And I think that it's a crucial part of the strategy that I believe is the best. I get the people together, get the people collaborating well, and then build a product. And you might come up with a new idea for the product when you have the people there. But in most businesses, and in the business I've been involved before, it's been create first the idea, first the structure for the idea, and then get the team to build it. And then it's obviously easier to kind of get the momentum going because you know already what you want to build. And I do believe that the way we're doing it now is long-term more efficient. And I'm still struggling a little bit with it because I'm not sure if this is my inner brilliant lawyer defending my own strategy here, or if it is actually the best approach to it.
Right. So what would be the actions we are taking right now to change this? Because you can build a team for a while, right? But at a certain point, they need to start building a product as well.
Yes, definitely. So what we've done now over the last few weeks has been to shift from having, I would say that our top priority up until now has been, let's build the best possible team, let's unite our values, let's do all of these things. And now we've shifted, so our top priority is let's build a product, let's get to a point where we have revenues, let's do these things. And I think that up until now, we probably had 95% of the focus on very long-term things like team building, like values, like these things, and maybe just 5% focus on product. And I think looking back, I wish that we would maybe had been on an 80-20. So I still believe it's a good thing that we've had so much focused on the team and these things. But I feel it would have felt good to have come a bit further with the product. And now the shift that we're going into, what we have for the last couple of weeks, has been, okay, maybe it's worth to put 95% of the focus on actually getting the product, getting momentum, getting things going, get some quick wins that we actually haven't had. So that's been a big shift in going from 95% long-term to 95% short-term, or whatever you want to call it. And I believe it's the right call, and it's a drastic call in many ways.
Right. And to me, it all makes sense. So I guess many listening to this are also interested in running their own businesses. What would you say they can take away from the approach you have had with Great, the extreme long-term thinking and the pulling away getting the profits?
I believe that doing it the way we are doing it can only be done if you have significant financial backup. It's okay for us to not make profit for a long time, which for most businesses, it's not. You need to make money. But I think just thinking about the question, how much time are we spending on long-term focus versus short-term focus? How much time are we focused on finding the right people rather than start building the product? So I think that we have taken it to an extreme, which is hard to apply for most businesses. But I believe that it's valuable to at least have more of the long-term thinking than the average company does. I think that one of the mistakes that I did early on was only thinking about the now, hiring for the now, making decisions, what do I need right now, instead of looking up and keeping a long-term focus. I think that it's worth to, for someone listening to this, it's worth to keep in mind the question, how much time am I actually working on things that are long-term, and how much time I'm actually working on things that are short-term? And my guess is that almost everyone spends almost all their time on the short-term thing. And I'm basing that on how I've done it in the past and the companies I've been close to. And I think it's worth to just be aware maybe not change anything, but be aware of that. How much time am I working short term and how much long term?
Do you have something you want to add on this topic before we move on to the
No,
next?
let's move on.
Woo! Then I am curious to dissect what happened in that phone call where you found $500,000 in 20 minutes. Bring! So what happened in the phone call?
The bring. Okay, so this was about 2 weeks ago. A friend of mine that I haven't spoken to in quite a long time, and not someone I know very well, but a guy I've been working with. He reached out to me and said, "Hey, Erik, I've seen you doing a lot of things about charity, and I want to give away €1,000,000. He has made a lot of money in the gambling industry as well. And I don't know how to do that. Can you please guide me?" And we were talking for like 20 minutes about the organizations that I believe are the best. And I was referring to Clean Air Task Force after the podcast interview that you did with them that really inspired me. I think that was episode 21 of the Great.com Talks With podcast. We'll leave the link in the description. But anyway, I started talking about this charity organization and things that I knew, and I realized I know a lot about charity and have a big heart for it, big passion for it. And when we hung up after 20 minutes, the last thing he said, like, "Good, I'm going to give €500,000 to Clean Air Task Force, this organization you recommend. I trust you." And that was like me. When I hung up, I was like, okay, he really wanted help. He has a lot of money that he wants to give away. I want to give away a lot of money. And he was still looking for like someone to trust, someone who knew something about this. And that would have been equal to great earning €500,000 and giving it away. But that would be a much, much bigger effort. So I realized a lot of things in this conversation, partly that the things that I've been making an effort for in social media and kind of talking about charity and doing donations publicly actually led to someone reaching out to me wanting my advice on where to give, and now hopefully will donate €500,000 to what I believe is the best organization in the world, making the biggest impact in the world right now. So I sat there contemplating afterwards how many other entrepreneurs out there is looking for similar guidance, how many struggle with not knowing where to give or what to trust. And yeah, so this was how it all started.
That is very interesting, and an opportunity that I understand you feel excited about. And yeah, it's interesting that he looks up to you. I guess your personality on social media, like you said, you're running a company that gives away all of the profits. I mean, I guess he's looking for someone that he can trust and someone that has done the research. Maybe belonging as well. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, I was thinking of you the other day, actually. And to me, your personality in its core is a networker. I know that is a big part of the reason why you have been successful with Catena Media. So you said in the beginning of this conversation, how can I take this further? How can you take your networking skills further?
Yeah, so what I started doing after this, I got really excited that a 20-minute conversation generated €500,000 to a very important cause. And I mean, he was still intending to give away the money, but there is a lot of organizations out there that doesn't do that much difference, unfortunately. So it's very likely that he would have ended up giving them somewhere else. So just knowing that my knowledge hopefully benefited the world very much in this situation got me excited. And I started writing down a list of all the other entrepreneurs that I know, people I've been working with in the past, or just general people that I know have a lot of money, to see, are these people contemplating similar things? And I realized that I know a lot of people with money. So I wrote a long list. I just sat and brainstorm, and I started asking myself, okay, how could I get more people interested in charity? Can I benefit them somehow? Can I give them whatever it is that they need to start doing these things? And I started calling them. So I reached out to a lot of people that I've known or that I've been talking to in the past. and just wanting to understand their perspective on charity. I asked them what 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 would they do if they wanted to get other people interested in charity? What kind of causes do they care about? And I found out that there is a lot of people have the same questions. Like a lot of people wonder who they could trust. A lot of people have problems with charities or think there is a lot of corruption and a lot of things around it. So at the moment, this is still taking shape in my head. Like, how can I help? How can I be of service? Is the best way I can do to create an event for people with money who wants to help? Could that make a huge impact for the world and inspire people to give away lots of money? Or should I just sit and call and see what people might need help with? And I don't want to come across as some kind of telephone salesman. I don't want to push people to donate money who doesn't want to give money. But I realized that there is a lot of people out there who could be giving away a lot of money, who probably wants to give away a lot of money, but is for one reason or another not doing it.
So it got to be a bit conflicting for you, having this huge opportunity, and at the same time, I sense hesitance that I don't really want to be pushy towards these people, and I want to probably, you run a company, so you're probably busy. How do you?
Yeah, I'm torn. I feel that I'm a little bit overwhelmed of this idea because I believe that one of the best things that I could do for the world would be to inspire rich entrepreneurs to give away money, inspire them to give away money to organizations that are proven to be world class. And at the same time, I want to focus on the product, like we said here. I want to give all of my attention to great.com and building the best product there can be. So I'm torn here with what to do with my time. That one voice in me tells me that the best thing I could do is to arrange an event, get rich people that I've been one way or another in contact with together with charity experts and hopefully get them inspired to do that. But that's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. It's hard. Will take a lot of energy. And at the same time, it might be the best thing I can do. So I'm mainly torn. I'm feeling overwhelmed of a fantastic opportunity and still a lack of time and energy.
I understand that conflict, especially when Great is making zero revenue at the moment. This sounds like a loop that is just being opened that we might return to at some point. Is there something more you would like to add now before we go to the next topic?
No, I feel that we can revisit this one again in the future, and hopefully there will be many more phone calls that have generated a lot of money for great organizations out there.
Right.
So let's move on to recruitment, because I believe for me that's been the biggest challenge in business. And if you can solve that riddle, you can solve pretty much anything else. So let's dive into what we've learned about it.
Recruitment can be tricky. Imagine that you have two candidates for a role and they're both great, but in completely different ways, personality types. Which road do you choose? That's just one of many ways recruitment can be tricky, I guess. But in fairness, we were in a quite luxurious situation when we were going to hire a podcast coordinator for the Great team, because we had about 500 people that applied for the role. So we had a lot to choose from, and we boiled it down to 6 people that we took in for first interviews and then a work test. And then we boiled it down to 2. And we have some concerns about how well we dealt with this process. And also we took a pretty unconventional approach by offering 2 people the role for 1.5 months, where they would both try the job and then we would see who did the best job. Now, this is a bit unconventional. So how do you feel about this strategy, Erik?
And to give some extra context on this, we started advertising about this role in March, and now it's July. So it's been taking quite a long time. And the reason has been that we got swarmed with applicants that we didn't really prepare for. So I could see one of the first errors that we did was to actually allow applicants from everywhere and not having a sorting system in place to start with. So Joachim, who was running the recruitment, had to go through 500 applicants one by one without really knowing anything, reading all the CVs, wasting a lot of time there. So just looking at that part about the process, if we start there, something that I've learned from that, and I can see us doing a lot better, is to next time have somewhat of a template where they can answer a couple of questions on beforehand. For example, we know what time zone they're in, because now when we had 500 applicants, we were never going to take someone who had a time zone too far away, because we're a remote organization. We wouldn't take someone in Australia, but we didn't know that. So instead we had to check that manually. Where are them? How they're doing? So I think that's the first thing that I take with me from this, is that it's not ideal to have that long of a process. And if we look into this specific situation here, what happened was that, as you mentioned, we had 6 candidates we really liked, out of which 2 stood out and we couldn't really decide upon them. So we offered them both to try the job for 6 weeks on a part-time basis and see who did the best job. And I'm torn about this. I can see from a company perspective, that's great. If both of them try for 6 weeks, you can really see who's the best and we can hire the best person. And recruitment is everything. Like if you do really well recruiting and hire the best people in the company, you're not going to have many other problems. But what ended up happening here, and what is the big risk for happening here, is that one of those 2 top candidates actually got another full-time job offer and didn't want to take the risk of staying on for 6 weeks and maybe not get the job. So she took that job instead of going on for this 6-week paid trial. And we might have ended up losing the best candidate there. We don't know, because we didn't have another way of deciding. So I'm torn. I think a recruitment process should be as fast as possible. And I don't know how we could have done this better. Well, I know that we could have sorted CVs a lot faster. Corona came, that made things tricky as well. And it's just interesting to look at it from the outside. It's been a learning process. I mean, we haven't done much distance recruitment before either. Anna, what did you take away from this process?
So I don't have much experience in recruitment, and I was surprised how long it took as well. We went from March, now it's in the end of July. And during all of that time, we have been on a standstill with the charity podcast that this person is supposed to run. And I don't really understand how much better we got at picking the right person by taking this much time, comparing to get someone in faster with maybe a less big work test or less interviews or anything like that, just to get the person in faster. I don't know if we could have made it in 2 months instead, and how much worse we would have been at picking the right person. I don't know. I think have enough experience.
One thing that is worth keeping in mind for people hiring people is, let's say you pick someone that is 10% better than someone else. That means, and they stay for, let's say they stay for a year and they get 10% more done than someone else. That is 1.2 extra months of effort that they're gonna be able to produce. So yes, that 10% alone would then be worth 1.2 months of working time to get someone in there, in a sense. And if someone stays for 10 years, that means that this person would be 1 extra year in comparison. So, and it's a lot more than that, because how they work with a team, how well they perform, how well they work individually. Between the best candidate and the second best candidate, it can be 200%, which is hard to discern where it is or how to see it. I believe that as a company, how much time is spent on recruitment is drastically under prioritized in general. At the same time, looking at this recruitment, I don't think that we spent that much time on it. We just spread it out a lot. I think that we could have done this a lot more efficiently. I think we could have made it a bigger priority than we did. Then again, we got a lot more candidates than anticipated. We had Corona, we had some technical issues that we needed to dealt with. But just keeping that in mind is like we would want to speed it up and we would want to have a better process for sure.
I agree. So do you have something more to add? If not, summarize what someone can learn from this. And after that, we're moving into the final topic.
So what my key takeaways is from this is if you're building a remote team, you're going to get a lot of recruitments from all over the world. We haven't advertised for any role before. So we couldn't anticipate getting so many people from so many places, because if you're usually hiring in one city, you cannot get that many applicants. So we got 500 applicants, which I would have been happy with 20. So keeping in mind, if you're hiring for a remote team, I think build a funnel in a sense, build something that they need to do manually to apply, so you can check where are they from or what languages do they speak or all these things. It doesn't need to be done manually, because I think that's where the biggest time consumption was. And another thing was, don't use your regular email address for all of these CVs coming in. So all of them went to Joachim. So he got 500, I don't know if even more than 500 emails coming in over a month or so, just flooding him in general all the time. So that's very simple things that we could have done better. Just set up a specific email inbox for this and have somewhat of a sorting system that was automatic, and deal with that. Because now it was just a big waste of time. And making sure that it's a priority to start with. Because one of the things with Katina, when I went into any hiring interview and I was supposed to hire someone, I deeply, deeply, deeply wanted to hire this person to get this problem out of the way. So a lot of the time I hired people, even though it didn't really feel that good, just because I wanted to tick that thing on my to-do list and move on. And I think that was one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest mistakes that I've done in my career has been not spending enough time on recruitment and not prioritizing it high enough. So I think that's, in general, things to take away from recruitment and the mistakes that I've done in the past and the challenges we had this time.
I like your summary for the reason that you're speaking from the experiences of running a real company. And that is the purpose for me of this update episode. See the nitty-gritty details of actually running a company. Exciting. Now let's move on to the fourth and final topic. A big part of Great.com's business model is that we will be able to get PR from the donations that we make. And we just made our first big donation. We tried our wings and we donated $100,000. So how did it go? Did we fly or did we fall? Erik, how did we do with this donation?
Well, so there's two important things to keep in mind here. That a big part of Great.com's long-term business model will be PR. Get websites to write about us and link to us, because that helps us rank high up in Google. So a very big part about what we're going to do is how can we get publicity for the things that we do. So now we tried a big project. We made a big donation. We did a big effort to get everyone aligned and get links and publicity based on this. And we got almost nothing, way, way less than we had hoped for. And at the same time, I don't see it as a failure. Well, I see it partly as a failure, but mainly not as a failure, because we went into this with the perspective that it's very likely that it will fail. And I believe that the only real failure is not trying. So I don't see this. We actually tested our wings. We threw ourselves off the cliff. We landed flat-faced on the ground. But we learned a lot from it. I think that was the other big part about this. I said this already to the team before we did this, that the most important thing right now is to learn. And I feel that we learned a lot about what kind of news will work with magazines and what will not work. At least we learned what will not work. We learned how we can collaborate better together in the team with this. We learned what we can prepare for newspapers and how I can prepare for the interviews that actually happen, because I got called up by some newspaper, wanted to interview me about this, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to say. So I think that from a PR perspective, it was a failure. We didn't accomplish at all what we wanted to. But from a team building perspective and from a learning perspective, we made a lot of progress. And I think we're going to do 100 donations more, probably, hopefully thousands of donations more in the future. So if we learn a little bit at every attempt, we're going to get really, really good at this 3 years from now.
Isn't it too much money, though, to take in this lesson? Like, couldn't we have done a much smaller donation to do practice and save the 100,000 for later? I mean, it's still charity money that we're gambling with here.
I wouldn't say that we're gambling. We're giving it away. We would give it away either way. So it would be one thing if we spent $100,000 on a PR campaign, but we actually gave away $100,000 to a great charity organization that's going to do amazingly good things with this money. And we're hopefully going to give away a lot more money. Well, we are going to give away a lot more money in the future. So I don't see this as gambling. If we were to spend it on a marketing company, it would have been one thing. But when we're giving it away to a wonderful cause, worst case scenario, a wonderful organization gets money to do wonderful things with. It's still a pretty good day for everyone.
Yeah, it's not the worst failure. Now, I'm actually curious to know what didn't work with the newspaper. What about the story didn't work?
So basically the press release was about Great.com donating $100,000 to Corona research charity. And I was hoping that this would be something that newspapers wanted to write about, like tech company in the casino industry giving away money. But it wasn't interesting enough. And I think part of it was that people don't really care about someone giving away money. It's in itself is not newsworthy enough. There needs to be a bigger spin on it. $100,000 is a lot of money, but it's really not that much money when it's about newspapers writing about things. They write about billions here and there all the time. So I think the amount wasn't impressive. So the angle was only giving it away to Corona. The amount wasn't that big. I think that we need to get better at having a spin on something, combining it with something. And I don't really know how or what to do there. I think part of it is that Great.com or myself isn't famous enough for people to care. That Greta Thunberg did a donation of $100,000 in similar kind of ways, but for the climate, because she won some scholarship or whatever it was, and that got shitloads of publicity, but it's because she is so famous in herself. So that's also something that's interesting to keep in mind here. It's not just the amount, it's how you do it, who you are when you're doing it. So yeah, I feel that I haven't figured out exactly how we could have done it better, but I figured out what's not going to work if we try it again.
Right, and that is a good start. So what are you proud of with this donation?
I'm very proud of that we tried. As I said before, I think the only real failure is when you don't try. And I think I felt myself that it's been very easy to get stuck in, okay, let's do this donation later on when we know more. Let's do this donation later on when we have made more money. Let's wait. Someone else will fix the climate. Someone else will solve this. And taking action, even though it felt like it was a big risk of failing, I feel proud that we choose to do that. I feel proud that we put ourselves out there, that we threw the dart, we missed the board, but now we know that, okay, we need to aim a little bit more to the right next time or whatever. And in a lot of projects before and a lot of charity stuff, I've never even thrown the dart. So yeah, that's what happened.
Right. And I like your sentence of saying we threw the dart. And that is what happened from my perspective as well, that the whole team came together and did something as a team. Because normally we're quite split up. We have one team that is doing podcast, one that is doing building the product. And now everybody worked together and everyone had something to do with this PR campaign. So it was a lot of fun to work with team members I normally don't have that close of
And I think
collaboration
that
with.
was the biggest value that it had. So even if we didn't manage to get the links, get the PR we were hoping for in the way we were, I think we learned a lot and we collaborated much better than we'd done in any other project before. And that was a huge win. So you could see that, you could look at it like we were throwing different kinds of darts. And one dart missed the board, but one hit the bullseye.
Right. We're coming towards the end here. And I have a secret question I just came up with for you. So with Great.com and the way the company is going, what is exciting you the most for this autumn? We're kind of starting a new season here.
So I'm excited about having this podcast coordinator in place. I'm excited about shifting focus to the product and things that are happening right now, and actually more tangible things that you can see happen on the website, things that creates momentum. To see where that can take us. It feels that we have been building a lot of things for the distant future, and now is the first time that we really dig into this and get going. So I'm very excited to see where we are 3 months from now or 6 months from now. It feels like the engine is roaring, but we haven't really stomped down the gas pedal and put in first gear yet.
That is the feeling I have as well. So we're coming towards the end of the episode. And if someone is listening to this and they feel excited, they felt like they got value of this, maybe they want more people to hear these kind of conversations, what can the listener do to help us?
The easiest way of helping us at the moment, and the most beneficial way for us, is to go to a podcast app and click subscribe. Because what happens when you subscribe to a podcast is that sends signals to all the different podcast top lists out there that this is a podcast that people are interested in. And the top lists are actually not based on how many listeners a podcast have. It's based on how big percentage of the listeners choose to subscribe. So even though that we are a very small podcast, we have about 1,000 people listening to each episode, every person clicking subscribe makes a big difference for us. If we would have 100,000 or millions, then each subscribe wouldn't be as important. But now when we're such a small podcast, it makes a big difference. So if you want to help us, please go to any podcast app, or as many as possible, and click subscribe. That would be wonderful for us. Thank you.
Tell your friends.
See you next week.
See you next
Cheers.
week. Bye-bye.